A month ago, my cat of 16 years died. I just want you to know how I'm feeling, and if you're here because your pet has died, maybe this video will help you, because the main thing I want to do for my companion of 16 years is to thank him for what he taught me about life and being human, and for the connection he gave me, not just with his personality, but with the animal kingdom, I guess. 8 or 9 months ago, our cat George, or Big G, or Wablet, or Chunk, or Stubby G, started being sick around the house. We took him to the vet, and because of COVID, we couldn't go inside with him. But I'm sure he was his usual self. He was always impeccably behaved at the vet, sprawling his tabby belly out for a scrub. He had a very nice tabby belly, that cat. We were told he needed a specialist, and we're fortunate enough to live near one that people travel to from around the country. We were sitting in the garden when the phone rang, and the vet told us that he was suffering from congenital heart failure. And we kind of thought, what pills will he need? Let's keep him going for another 5 years. But the vet told us that he had a few months to live. He explained that he could have a stroke at any moment, and that he could be paralysed. We could wake up in the morning or find him somewhere paralysed. Even the process of bringing him to the vets for treatment could kill him because of the stress. So we brought him home and we looked after him. He was our baby, and what else could we do? We owe him 16 years of comfort and love. We gave him 4 pills a day and lots of scrubs, and head scrub and chin scrub. Dairy with pate work wonders with a cat when you're doing the pills thing, just so you know. And after a month or two, his breathing became laboured. His tiny rib cage, now more pronounced on his little body, was struggling to keep him going. His lungs were filling up with fluid. So what do? We asked the vet for advice, and they said bring him straight in. They also couldn't believe that he was still alive following his earlier prognosis. They told me after they drained his lungs that it was an easy procedure, only requiring mild sedation, and we brought him out. They said it takes like 10 minutes. Don't worry about bringing him back for that. So we did that a few times. We didn't want to put him through too much. And they eventually said they didn't want to see him again. Luke, our vet, must have fallen under George's spell, because he called me later to see how he was. He sent off an email that signed off, "We're really very sorry. George really is a lovely cat." And every time we brought him out and picked him up, he'd be like, "God, that cat's just brilliantly well behaved." Anyway, at home he perked up and put on some weight. We spent time together on the sun lounger, and just last week I fell asleep with my head burrowed into his tabby, furry, warm belly. He taught us to make each other feel safe, and he taught me to take time out, to relax a bit. He'd beckon me over with his silent, slow blink. "Come to the sun lounger. Let's listen to the birds." And he didn't really kill birds. Let's share some nature. Emily slept with him on the bed. She'd watch TV with him on the sofa. He'd wind around her legs in the kitchen. He'd almost dictate her emails as she worked at the kitchen table. I'd have a coffee with him on the patio, and he'd bellow at Emily for his breakfast and then demand something else. He taught us never just to accept that. Very, very fussy cat, to the point of me being furious. He'd skip ahead on the garden path so he could roll around in front of us, demanding and demonstrating his love. He'd sit with Ems as she enjoyed a glass of wine in the evening. He taught us that you can love anything. He had a particular connection with a fluffy hat that looked like a curled up sleeping tabby, just like G. And every night, morning, afternoon, or whenever, he would knead her, blinking gently, purring his strange purr. If Tabitha, as we called her, wasn't on the bed, he would look at us, the perplexed look. "Where's Tabitha?" we'd say. Pop her on the bed, and he's happy again. She even got mentioned in the extensive instructions to our lovely friends who looked after him when we chose to go on a brief holiday. We didn't go far, just off to Oldborough, just in case he got ill and we'd have to come back. Who wouldn't? So thanks Sammy, Dane, Fran, Jordan, Emma, Mum, Dad, Chris, Kelly, Tom, and the many more people who looked after him. He taught us how important our friends and our neighbours are. He always had a way of converting people over to cats. He taught us to try and like everyone. And he pretty much won every time. Someone would be like, I don't like cats. He'd be like, I'm sitting next to you. And he'd convert them every time. He started his tabby life in our little recording studio, so was very used to people being around. Noise, laughter, fun, that was George's essence. His tabby face was embossed on our wedding favours. He wouldn't have wanted to come to the church, but he was there. He taught us commitment. His silent love was dedication. Our looking after him was commitment. Just last week we had a party in our kitchen. Big G, ever the centre of attention, sat there right in the middle of it, curling around us as we all laughed. He was such a part of our family and a part of my friendship group. He was just our best mate. He taught us to have fun. Every morning without fail he would join me in the back garden as I watered the plants. Just out there. Foreman G, we'd call him. He'd watch as we extended the house, and when we didn't have stairs, I'd have to carry him up to the bed with us. Just sling him over my shoulder. The ladder was just too dodgy. He taught us to care for each other. When Emily went away on holiday, he stayed by my side and signed off my work after I'd renovated the drive. After I shut his tail in the door and he went from being Big G to Stubby G, he taught us to forgive, and that forgiving is unconditional. For him, there was no question of forgiveness. We even left him a voicemail the day Emily and I got engaged on holiday. When we were sick in bed, he just knew. He knew when we were sad and he knew when we needed cheering up. He'd go to work cheering us up. He taught us to care for our friends. He was a star of the show on my other YouTube channel, even having his own merchandise. A fan of the channel even bought him a catnip plant. I planted it over there about 8 years ago. And look how it's grown. It's absolutely massive. He loved that plant and he loved his tree. In every aspect of our lives, every transient, unknowing stream of time that we lived through, every moment, there was him. Our winding, slinky, gorgeous friend. The union of our unspoken friendship. The warm air of our togetherness. The silent purity, dedication, sacrifice we had for one another was there. On Saturday, I went out and got loads of firewood for the winter. It was a lovely sunny day, and as ever, Big G was outside with us in the garden as we loaded the wood store. That evening he had a few Wotsits, a naughty treat, but what the hell? He's 15 and a half or 16. Some pate and even some milk. He'd not been coming upstairs of late and preferred to sit by the back door looking into his garden, sleeping on his rug with the underfloor heating. I left our bedroom door and the kitchen door ajar as usual. He'd still pop up for belly scrubs and Tabitha, long leg and white chin. Was a mark of how well the belly scrubs were going. On Sunday morning, I plodded downstairs to make us a coffee, and there was no bellowing. The sliding door into the kitchen, just open a cat's head's width, was not being rubbed by his tabby head. There was no welcome morning chirrup, and just through the gap into the kitchen, I could see his stubby tail and his leg. I knew then that this was his greatest gift to us, his greatest demonstration of thanks and love to us all. No going to the vets in the car a stroke, no drama, not being paralysed. His whiskers were perfectly arranged under his head. He just fell asleep. He defied the vets and lived on with us for another 6 months, but he decided that night, on his own terms, his integrity, his honesty, and his greatest lesson: enjoy every day, recognise love, enjoy it, bathe in it, and accept its pain. We cried like wounded animals, and the cries and noises Emily and I have made since then, and that I'm making to you now, is every minute of love, every present, every gift, every moment in time, every lesson he's taught us, being melted down through our tears deep into our soul. The purity, the transient stream of his life flowing into our hearts like a warm waterfall of joy. The heady cocktail of George's nature. We took him to a special crematorium, one that only does one pet at a time. The garden and the shed very much like the one we'd built together under George's watchful eye, and the one I'm in now. He went on his final journey with Tabitha and his favourite rug in the box with him. The kind old man said he'd look after him. Sorry, guys. We should be back in a few hours. We walked by the sea in Sheringham. The sun was shining and the endless horizon. He's on the kitchen table behind me now. We're going to spread most of his ashes all around the garden so that whatever time of day he's in the sun and whatever season he'll be warm. We'll keep some of him in the house, but I think he's already there. We went out to the garden centre. It's difficult being in the house at the moment. It's so still and quiet. To buy a plant so George's love could grow in the garden forever. We couldn't find one, but as we were leaving, by the exit was a plant with leaves changing. They were transient, almost tabby. And when we brought it home and put it in the place where George used to sunbathe in the afternoons, only then did we notice that the leaves were all in the shape of hearts. And the plant was actually called Eternal Flame, which I thought was very apt for such a bitey little git of a cat. We still leave the kitchen and bedroom door ajar, just in case he wants to pop in. I glance at the wood store where he'd be sunbathing, and I keep catching glimpses of him. I keep hearing him. 16 years. 16 years. I know some of you may be watching this video having lost your own best friend, the old YouTube algorithm. And there is a quote often attributed, rightly or wrongly, to A.A. Milne. But it doesn't matter. I'm just going to change it a bit just for George. How lucky we are to have loved you so much, and how lucky we are to have loved so much, that saying goodbye is so hard. We'll love you forever, George. Thank you.